Sounding Board, a television production of Seroptimus International. My guest today is filmmaker and author Diana Paul. My name is Barbara Herwick, and I'll be your moderator. Today we'll be talking about the universal subject of birth. Do you have all the facts? But first, a word about Seroptimus. Our mission is to improve the lives of women and children, and girls specifically, through programs leading to social and economic empowerment. Before I introduce Diana, let's see a clip from one of Diana's first films.
About 25 years ago, I was a full-time member of the faculty of the School of Medicine and School of Public Health at the University of California at Los Angeles. Then I spent 2 years doing maternal and child health for the California State Health Department. And then I left this country and moved to Europe. In other highly industrialized countries outside of North America, birth is much more seen as a normal part of the life cycle and not as a medical or surgical event.
It's the best having a baby at home. How long's it been? An hour and a half? I am so
almost 2 hours
happy I did it at home. I'm going to cry. I can't imagine. I wish I'd done it with every single one of them at home.
When I lecture to a room full of American doctors and they get upset about home birth, I say, wait a minute, hold it. Let me ask everybody in this room who has ever been at a home birth, please raise your hand. And nobody raises their hand. They've never even seen it.
You know, they tell you, well, what if you have complications when you're at home? But the thing is that you have less because you are at home. But it's exactly what you guys are talking about, that you have to trust that. No one can, you can prove it, but you have to trust that for yourself. Do you know what I mean?
Now, until I left this country and moved to Europe, everything that I had learned about pregnancy and birth, I had learned in the very orthodox, usual way from medical doctors. And I assumed simply that that was the way to do pregnancy and birth. It's the way all the doctors were doing it around here, and it seemed the way it should be. And then I moved to Europe and began working for the World Health Organization, and I had a huge shock. Because as I would go around to the highly developed countries of Western Europe, I'm not talking about the third world here, I'm talking about Germany and France and England and Denmark and Sweden and all of these countries, where in fact they are as highly developed as our own country. I discovered to my amazement that there was a very different way of doing birth than anything I had ever seen. First of all, the great majority of pregnant women were taken care of by something called a midwife. I didn't really basically know what a midwife was before I left the United States. Even with all of my training and work in healthcare, I didn't know what a midwife was until I left this country and went to Europe, where I discovered to my amazement that the midwife is an absolutely essential key healthcare practitioner who is responsible for the care of the great majority of pregnant women, doing all of the checkups and tests and all the rest, following the woman throughout her pregnancy. And when the woman has a birth, and I'm talking about in the hospital now in Europe, the woman goes into the hospital, she's taken care of by the midwife assists at the birth, the woman goes home, and the woman has never laid eyes on a doctor at any time during that pregnancy or birth. And they lose fewer babies and they lose fewer women than we do here in the United States. So here was this key health professional that I knew nothing about. And indeed, when I came back to the United States, as I did very often, because I was responsible for maternity care in the industrialized countries for the World Health Organization, so I came here too, and began talking about midwives, I discovered that the doctors in this country didn't know what a midwife was. They thought that she was some kind of a second-class obstetrician or something, which is absolutely wrong. You see? And in this country, they still think that midwives need to be supervised by doctors. Nonsense. In all of these other countries where they have a much better track record than we do, the midwives aren't supervised by doctors. They're absolutely independent health professionals taking care of the great majority of pregnant and birthing women. So I came slowly to realize that there was a whole different way of seeing pregnancy and birth than what we were doing in the United States. One of the most important experiences I've ever had in my life happened after I had moved to Europe and I was working for the World Health Organization, and I went with a midwife and was present for the first time at a home birth. I was absolutely amazed. It caused for me what some people call a paradigm shift, which means you completely shift the way you think about something. Because suddenly I saw this woman slowly throughout her labor become more and more powerful and strong until finally near the time of birth, she was in control. The doctor wasn't in control, the midwife was. That woman was in control. She found her power. She found her womanness. And she was there with that baby. And when the baby came out, I'm a neonatologist. I had seen hundreds of babies come out in the hospital. They always come out blue and floppy. Try a home birth. No such nonsense. The baby comes out pink. The baby comes out smiling and alert. It's a totally different phenomenon.
Diana, thank you so much for being on our show today. Yes. I've heard so much about you, and I have to admit that when I was watching your films last night and this morning, I was just mesmerized. They were beautiful, they were so informative, I learned so much. And
it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm just really anxious for you to share your wisdom and knowledge with us all. So before we start, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what propelled you to get into this line of work?
Good question, because I never dreamed I would be making films in my life. But what happened was I had 3 beautiful home births, and the first 2 were just with my husband alone in Mill Valley. And the third one, we finally found a midwife who would attend us. And so after the birth of our third child, I said, "Oh, I really want to be a midwife." And she said, "No, you don't." I said, "Yes, I do. I want to be like you. I want to be a midwife." And she said, "No, Diana, in California, to be a midwife, you have to go to nursing school. And that's a 4-year program. And then after that, you can go to take the midwifery training, and that's another 3 years, and it's very expensive." And I'm thinking, 4 years plus 3 years. And then she said, "And then after you get your certificate to practice as a midwife, you have to unlearn everything they taught you." And I'm like, what? A lot of money, 7 years, unlearn everything they taught me just for a certificate? There's got to be a better way than that. So I called a friend who was a midwife. She was really one of the most popular midwives at the time in the whole Bay Area. And I said, you know, what I do want to be a midwife, but I don't want to go to school at my advanced age, I thought at the time, and learn all this stuff to have to unlearn it. And she said, oh, we'll go down to Texas. In El Paso, there are 2 clinics there where the women come across the border in order to give birth so that they can get the birth certificate so their child later on can choose which, you know, if they want to be Mexican or U.S. citizen. So I did that, and then our family moved to Massachusetts, and I connected with a traditional home birth midwife, and we attended births there. So that was my background, was that I wanted to help other women have this extraordinary experience of empowerment that I had. And the stories I was hearing from other women, they weren't good. They were, you know, grief over a cesarean or lots of interventions or just, and I thought, you know, that wasn't the design of birth. The design of birth is to be exhilarated when it's over and you want to do it again. And that's the way it was for me. But 3 times was enough. So.
Well, that's really interesting. You've also written a book entitled Wild Naked Ladies. That will get everyone's attention. But I was struck by so many of the pages, but particularly the acknowledgement page where a father says, and I'll just read it.
And that book took me a long time to write. It's an alphabet book.
Right, the ABCs
Yes.
of birthing, where the father says, "What amazes me is that in a little more than 100 years, the hospital birth, a process that sterilizes the experience and anesthetizes its raw primordial power, has become the norm, and home birth, the oddity in America. In fact, home birthing is illegal in some states, and some insurance agencies will not cover it because a home birth is not a medical necessity. When did hospitalization become a requirement for normal childbirth?" That's a really good question that he asks.
Yes. Well, as a matter of fact, the laws are different in every state. And it's true that there are still half a dozen states where midwifery is illegal. It's a felony if you practice as a midwife. You know, Alabama, I think Indiana, states where you would think, gosh, you know, people have been giving birth for centuries naturally, you know. But Mississippi's one of them where it's illegal. It's a felony. And it used to be the same in Missouri. It was a felony, and there was an underground, you know, network because there are those women who want to have a home birth. They don't want the government saying, no, you cannot have a home birth. It is legal to give birth yourself in every state except Nevada. I don't know why Nevada. I mean, just think of it. You're on a hike and whoops, or, you know, you've seen these programs where on YouTube, there are a lot of them. In fact, there's one recently where the woman gave birth in the car, and it was uploaded to YouTube in July, and it has 27 million hits. The husband's filming it, he's driving, you see the scenery go by, and she's saying, hurry up. And he says, you want me to pull over? She says, no, let's get there. I mean, it's really, so things like that happen. I mean,
So wait, you're saying that it's legal to have a birth by yourself?
Yes, but
in all states, but it's illegal in some states to have a midwife.
To have somebody attend you, a professional, somebody experienced. Yes, and there's a history to this. I mean, it's business, you know, it's competition. And it's too bad because the mother and the baby are shortchanged in that. You know, it's not about the mother and the welfare of the baby. So,
Right, which leads me to your book again, when a mother wrote, and I quote, "When a woman gives birth without interventions, she is empowered by her experience as the true depth of her physical and emotional reserves is revealed." Can you elaborate on that?
Well, it was certainly revealed for me. The first time, you don't know what you don't know. That's for sure. And I had never experienced birth, and I went to 2 different doctors who would attend a home birth, but they were not acceptable. One was senile, and the other used language that I didn't want in my home. And I thought, wait a minute, this is, to me, a sacred event, and I want to keep it that way. I don't want them in my presence. And so my husband, the lawyer, I said, let's read the law. I don't want to be illegal, but I don't want to. And he was born at home. His mother had him at home, and that was an eye opener for me. I didn't know anybody who was born at home, but I thought, wow, why not? I'd like to be queen of this experience, So he came home one day, and I thought he was going to bring the books and we'd look at it together and figure out, what we're going to do. But he came home and he said, well, I read the law, and it looks like if we do it ourselves, we won't be prosecuted. I'm going, prosecuted? What is he thinking? I just want to have a baby. And so I was sort of, mentally, it was like, that's what we're going to do. And so he's like, okay. So that first birth, and we couldn't tell our parents. What we did tell them was that he had a law school classmate, and he was a doctor, and he and his wife lived down the street in Mill Valley, and they said they'd come over. Well, he was skiing in Colorado when the baby arrived, and so it was just my husband and me, and it was the most exquisite experience of my life. I was so, even thinking about it today, I was so transformed, because you're working so hard. You go through the 9 months, and then there's the labor, and it is labor. And you're working so hard to bring this baby forth, and the baby is working hard too. You know that, and you want to be in a position where it's good for the baby too. So I read the books, and I just picked one of the books' positions, and the baby arrived, and just I can remember the moments before the baby arrived. I thought, I can't think. I can't pray. It was just so overwhelmingly physical, the experience. And then as soon as the baby was out, he didn't cry. His eyes were enormous, and he just looked around all around the room like, where am I? And my husband was right there, and he caught him. And I think that he'd done all the reading in our relationship, and I wanted to just experience it. I didn't want to read. I wanted to just feel it. And so he put the baby to my breast, and he nursed for an hour just immediately. And then he thought, whoa, I'll give him a La Boyer bath, because that was the thing, put them in warm water. So after an hour, he took the baby down the hall to the bathroom where he had this bath prepared for him. I stayed in bed, but the bath had turned cold. He put the baby in, and he goes, "Wah!" And that was the first time he cried.
Oh my gosh.
So then he rushed the baby back, and he nursed for another hour, and then we all fell asleep.
So your own experience, it sounds like, propelled you to want to share with others. But I want to get, before we continue on that vein, I want to talk about how the United States ranks in regards to infant mortality. I know that's not your favorite subject, but when you told the statistics to me a couple days ago, I was shocked. And
Yeah.
would you tell our viewers about that?
The world, I mean, every citizen in the USA should be shocked. I mean, that is the correct response. My son.
Tell us the number exactly.
Well, I'm going to get to that.
I'm afraid we're running out of time here.
Oh, really? Okay. So, well, my son said, Mom, you can find out the statistics of baby deaths in the U.S. by going to the CIA World Fact Book and typing in infant mortality. So I did, and we were ranked 43 in the world. And I nearly fell off my chair. I thought, how can this be? We spend 20 times what the number one safe place to give birth at that time, it was Singapore. And I mean, they spent like $200 per capita on healthcare to our 8,000 plus. And so then I made a t-shirt. Why is the USA ranked 43rd in the world for infant mortality? And then I ran out of t-shirts and I went to make another one. I thought, oh, I'll check. Maybe it's gone down. It went to 46. The next t-shirt was 50. Then the next t-shirt after that was 55. Now we're ranked 57th. I've stopped making t-shirts. We're going the wrong way. And as a matter of fact, there were some millennium goals, and one was to improve health care for women who are giving birth. And so every country in the world, with the exception of the United States of America, improved maternal outcome at birth. And the United States got worse. So we're getting worse for infant mortality, and we're getting worse for maternal mortality, even compared to the rest of the... In fact, Cuba, that spends almost nothing on health care, is 16 places ahead of us in terms of infant mortality. I mean, they give better care to their mothers and babies than we do.
So what is behind this? What are we not doing that the other countries are doing? And by the way, who is number one? What countries are...
Right now, well, it does change, but usually Iceland, Sweden, Holland, those countries are
And
in
what
the
are
top
they
five.
doing that we're not
They're
doing?
giving women choice. They're respecting women. If you're in Holland, you can have any kind of birth you want, and the government will pay for it completely. So it's not, it's what we're doing to women. We're intervening too much on birth. I mean, this is a divine design, in my humble belief that, you know, it's a perfect design, and we want to get in there and do things to the woman. And we need to change our laws. They need to be more woman, baby centered.
And along that line, are cesarean operations, are they on the rise in the United States? Is that contributing to this high mortality rate?
Well, possibly. I think the C-section rate has actually come down just slightly. So today we're at 32.7% of the births in the U.S. are by cesarean section, but the World Health Organization said it should be like 9 or 10% at the most for an industrialized country like the U.S. So we're clearly 3 times out of line, according to the World Health Organization. And I don't understand why people don't know this and why there isn't more of an outcry.
Right, I'm just shocked. What can we do to change the mindset of Americans?
Have interviews and just discuss it. Just change the mindset. That is what I'm working on. I'm making films that are shown, and you know, I think that's helping. And also, it's great. We've got YouTube now. I mean, there are over 500 home births on YouTube, and that's pretty exciting. It's getting out there, but we need to be even more proactive. I know that in Norway, once the breastfeeding had fallen to just in the low 20s, something like that, and the government had a very strong campaign with posters and videos and television ads showing mothers breastfeeding, you know, skiing down the slope and going into the lodge and breastfeeding, and it had an effect, so it turned it around to like something like 99.9% of the women giving birth breastfed.
Wow.
So with a little government, support, we can change our numbers around too, and we definitely should. I mean, Seroptimus is about women and children and babies. We want to give them the best.
Right. And just jumping really quickly to your first film, Birthday, I was just amazed. How did you get in contact with all these women all over the world giving natural childbirth?
Well, that first video, Birthday, it was great. It's only like 10 minutes, and it shows natural birth in a beautiful family setting in Jalapa, Veracruz, Mexico. And the way I did that was I met the woman. I was at a conference in Texas, a midwifery conference. She was there. She's a midwife. She was very pregnant. We were interviewing different people, and she was one of the people we interviewed. And I said, "Would you like us to film your birth?" And she said, "Oh, that'd be great, except I'm going to have a natural birth. I don't know when. I can't tell you." So we sent the camera down to them with the film, and her father took the footage, and it came back. I was just squealing with delight. And so then we went down with a film crew and did establishing shots. And that film was installed in the Museum of Science in Boston for about 15 years.
That's an amazing film. I was really just mesmerized again watching that. So we're just about out of time. If our viewers wanted to see any of your films, what can they go online or?
Yeah, so our website is lovedelivers.org, and you
Okay.
can buy the films there.
All right.
And actually, I think we have a YouTube channel, Love Delivers, and I think one of our really great films is there. It's called Birth in a Cow Trough. So you can look that up. It's only 3 minutes, but I loved that one because it's a woman who doesn't have a lot of means, and she wanted to have a wonderful home birth, so she made this cow trough look, like a sauna or, a spa in her kitchen, and she gave birth there. And it was during a snowstorm too. I was holding the camera, kind of taking a picture of the birth, watching the snow just go. It was the worst storm of the century back there. And anyway, it's a great film. It's 3 minutes.
Okay, so lovedelivers.org. I want to say thank you to Diana Paul for being with us today. Thank you to the Seroptimus crew. Special thanks to Leon Johnson, our chief engineer. And thank you to the Buck Institute on Research in Aging for allowing us to video here. And special thanks to our viewers like yourselves.